now on its own.
Okay.
At least it's general. He's quite open-minded, and he's quite confident in chief. He says, the chief is a kind of summary.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone here and also on the online via the Facebook. It's my honor again today to be able to be with you all for this. For me, is very important issues talking about the situations of the people on the move in our regions. And we've been talking quite a lot about situation of Rohingya in many places, and today is the opportunity to talk on the situations of the Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. My name is Puttani Kangkan. I am director of the Fortify Rights, and happy to meet you all here and also online. สำหรับท่านที่เข้าฟังออนไลน์นะคะใน Facebook นะคะเรามีล่ามภาษาไทยนะคะช่วยเข้าไปกดดูในคอมเมนต์นะคะเราจะแปะลิงก์เอาไว้ถ้าท่านสนใจจะฟังภาษาไทยขอให้เข้าไปใน Zoom นะคะลิงก์ที่ Zoom นะคะที่เราแปะอยู่ในคอมเมนต์นะคะ I'm explaining about the interpretation that we have the Thai language also, but the panel today we are going to talk in English. And yes, anyone who is interested to listen to Thai, you have to check with the for Facebook and click into the link that we share in the comment. Okay, yes. The issue today is, as you see, after the Shipwreck, confronting Malaysia's refugee protection crisis. As you know, Malaysia is host more than 200,000 refugees registered by the UNHCR, and 153/3 think is considered as the people that we call Rohingya people, mainly from Myanmar. And recently in November, if you follow the situation of Rohingya, you found that there's both sink near the Thailand and Malaysia borders, and we found 29 people dead. Dead body that we found, including 5 who are children. And there's also numbers of people who have been rescued. But in order of providing humanitarian support, the Malaysian government sued those who crossed the borders illegally. And now the case is in the court on the offense related to Immigration Act. What can we do? How can Malaysian government doing better to support Rohingya people? What about the ASEAN and also Thailand, who's part of the route of the people on the move, Rohingya and other people from Myanmar and somewhere else? So today I have my honor to be with 3 speakers who really know a lot about the issue that we are talking about. The first one is Lê Cheng, right? He is a senior human rights specialist at Fortify Rights. He's based in Malaysia, but it's good opportunity that he's here in Thailand, so then he can share with us on his work regarding to advocate to protect the rights of the refugees in Malaysia. And the next one is Professor Ajahn Lalita Hanwong. I think that anyone who follows the situation of Myanmar, the analysis and everything, you must know her. She's teach at the Kasetsat University, social science. Yeah, social science and Kasetsat University, but she's knowing a lot about situation, what happened in Myanmar, and I think she'll be able to share with us her thoughts and also is there any solution on the situation inside. And the last one for me is Sulaiman Phukmanirat. He is the young Rohingya who've been living here, and he's real activist, and he's very courageous to share the situations of the Rohingya people on the communities that he's been working with, and he would be the voice of them because many of them, 99% of them, are not able to sit here in the public. So we have the honors and privilege to have him here and to share the situation of Rohingya in Thailand and in the region with us. So I would like to start from Lê Cheng. Yes, Lê Cheng, as from the introductions, can you share a little bit of what happened and what did you do on the situations of the shipwreck and situation of Rohingya refugees in Malaysia?
Thank you so much, PA. Let me just begin by saying how nice it is to have such a diverse crowd here today to kind of gather minds and really confront what has really become like a protection crisis in Malaysia. And I'm Malaysian and live in Kuala Lumpur. So for those of us who are not caught up to speed, maybe let me just summarize very quickly what happened. In early November, there was a boat of mainly Rohingya refugees that capsized near the Thai-Malaysia maritime border, so off the coast of Langkawi, which is our northernmost island in Malaysia. So subsequently, the government launched a search and rescue operations, recovered some bodies, rescued a few survivors, including 5 children, as PA mentioned. And however, the government's early tone of the approach of humanitarian assistance quickly kind of pivoted towards one of criminal prosecution, right? So on November 19, the government filed criminal charges against 11 of these survivors, and the 3 remainers are like minors, so they are still kept in immigration detention. But then, however, on that day itself, there was no court interpreters, so the court had to adjourn the case towards early next week. So in all likelihood, early next week, they'll be charged with offences under the Immigration Act, which carries up to 10,000 ringgit fine, which is about 2.5 thousand USD dollars, or up to 5 years of jail or both, right? So the government has basically taken victims of trafficking and then charged them in court, which is severely inhumane, and it's not what the government has tried to portray itself in the global stage, which is that of a kind of like democratic Muslim country that's humane to its fellow Muslim brotherhood all across the globe, right? That's precisely not what happened. But I also want to mention that, in fact, it wasn't the survivors that they recovered were now numbered at 14, but in fact, like the original ship that they believe numbered at 300. So they believe that there was a bigger ship that left Butidong, which is a Rohingya majority township, for those of us not familiar with the geography of Myanmar. A boat of 300 splintered into 3 smaller vessels, and only 1 has so far been accounted for, right? And if you guys remember, like there was this massive flood in Hat Yai, and then there was like a really bad weather also in northern Malaysia during the same time, right? So in all likelihood, they probably perished at sea, because how could anyone survive those choppy sea waters during that time, right? It was so bad that the government declared it like, oh, because due to inclement weather, we have to stop the search and rescue operations at this time, right? So, someone so equipped had to stop search and rescue. How else would all these smaller vessels survive the choppy seas, right? So I want to use, I guess this really kind of shows that like in Malaysia, we are not doing enough to protect refugees. We are taking the wrong approach to criminalizing people on the move. And maybe next slide, please. Oh, it's not showing. Can you click again? Oh, yes. I want to show that like, especially in the past year, the government has ramped up immigration enforcement against refugees and migrants in Malaysia massively. So what this is the monthly average number of arrests of undocumented migrants and refugees in Malaysia. If you just focus on 2015, right, it has kind of like escalated so much more than the past 10 years, right? You see the numbers keep going up, and it coincides with what the government has called its year of enforcement campaign, literally like quote year of enforcement in a very prosaic way. And what the government intends to do is just arrest undocumented migrant workers, undocumented people, in order for 2 reasons. Firstly, there's a huge spike in xenophobia in Malaysia after COVID, and there's this drive towards maintain, to drive people out of the country. But secondly, it has also implemented an amnesty program. They are trying to encourage people to voluntarily repatriate back to the countries they come from. So for example, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Myanmar, right? But in order to carry that out, they are pairing like a carrot and stick approach. The stick is that they will ramp up immigration raids and arrests in order to drive fear into the undocumented hearts and minds, for them to sign up for this program to return to their country. So that's what accounts for this massive spike in raids that has happened over the past year. Next, please. And just that is a monthly average, but if you really kind of look at the total annual figures, what is happening in 2025 is totally unprecedented. We have never ever had, this escalation in immigration rate and arrests that's happening in Malaysia. To put things into context, for 2024, ICE, the Immigration and Custom Enforcement of the US, arrested only 140,000 people. In Malaysia, that is 10 times smaller. We are projected to arrest and detain 100,000 undocumented people this year alone. So a country that's 10 times smaller than the States, right? We are achieving parity with a country of such massive size. So that, I want to bring this up because it really is, we don't talk about like the refugee situation in Malaysia a lot because a lot of focus is, what's happening in Myanmar, but in fact they're going through a second kind of crisis. And in fact, a lot of people told me like, after all the travesty and that they've been through in Myanmar and they end up in Malaysia and they go through this sort of really punitive, abusive immigration system, that they sometimes wish, oh, why don't I just go back, right? It's actually as bad here. Yeah, next slide, please. And one effect of the government massively ramping up immigration enforcement is that the immigration detention centers are in fact full already. The government declares that the capacity of our immigration detention center is 21,500 people, but we currently have, as of either September or October, I think, we have 21,000 people in the immigration detention capacity. So the government uses this figure and keeps saying that, they keep telling us that, oh, in fact, we are not full, there is still 500 of capacity, we are okay. But actually, we don't know how this methodology is arrived at, right? Like there is, in fact, a Human Rights Commission report that looks at how a particular immigration detention center was gazetted for like 400 people, but it meant the government declares it to be fit for 700 people. So they could be inflating their numbers, and the numbers here that we see are already at full capacity, in fact. I've so far presented a lot of numbers, but I want to emphasize that these are irreducible human stories of abuse, right? I've been documenting some of these immigration violation crime abuses in Malaysia, and people tell me that it is so bad in the immigration detention center, they sometimes take shifts to sleep. So, it could be like a room like that. Imagine 70 people crammed into a room like that. And I will tell, Lalita, that I will sleep for 3 hours, and then like you can sleep the next 3 hours because it's impossible to lie down on the floor already. It's that cramped. And people tell me also that access to clean water is severely limited. I've heard so many cases of people having to drink water off the toilet itself because they provide, let's say, 2 very small cups of water a day, and it's impossible to get clean drinking water. And once you're desperate and thirsty, they turn to the toilet, right? And many people fall sick just from that alone. And a lot of people are just punished for just asking for more clean water to drink, and it's really horrible. And because of how unsanitary the conditions in the immigration detention camps are, people often contract scabies, right? They tell me things like one person contract like skin rashes, and then suddenly an entire cell of 70 to 100 people would just go like itchy, like all in a matter of a few days. That's it's that infectious. I've also heard of stories of how people are forced to give birth in the immigration detention centers in Malaysia without assistance, without kind of medical access. In fact, this one particular case, what happened was that she gave birth 2 days after her arrest, right? And instead of providing access to medical treatment, as is her right, what the guards did instead was hit her because she said, I don't know how to give birth. I've never done it before. It's insane. So, but fortunately, there were no complications to her birth, and the child and mother survived. Eventually, UNHCR intervened, and she was let out of the detention center after like many, many months. To give a bit more context to these figures, it's 21,000, right? What does that mean? In Thailand, the total number of immigration detainees last year was 1,800. So we are 10 times more than Thailand, right? And Indonesia, a country of such scale and so much bigger than our Malaysia is, has in total last year, I think, 4,300 immigration detainees. So we are a country, Malaysia is a country of immigration. You know, we are the immigration state. We arrest people, we put them through abusive, torturous, and inhumane conditions. And out of this number, 9,000, basically, you know, close to half of the immigration detainees are from Myanmar, and also from other countries, Indonesia, Philippines, Bangladesh. And I want to emphasize that out of this population from Myanmar, the majority are Rohingya. So if you put the figures together, about 1 in 4 immigration detainees are Rohingya. And what makes their situation quite unique is that they can be not just held for 3 months, 4 months, they could be held for like several years, 2 years, 3 years, up to 7 years or 8 years, which is what people who have been inside come out, they tell me, oh, I've seen other Rohingya who have been there for 7 or 8 years. They are kids who grew up their entire lifetime in detention conditions. How is that even allowed in Malaysia, right? And that actually falls down to because of their statelessness, right? If you are Burmese, say you're arrested by the Malaysian authorities, the Myanmar embassy might come and take you, and they might take you back to your Myanmar country. But I have heard of stories where the Rohingya, some immigration detainees, they beg the embassy officials to, please, this is really horrible, can you please bring me back to Myanmar? And the immigration officers just, because of the non-recognition of Rohingya as citizens of Myanmar, they just kind of ignore them. So 1 in 4 immigration detainees in Malaysia are Rohingya, and also they are indefinitely detained for multiple years. That's how severe the situation is. And with that, I want to just emphasize that we have reached an impasse in Malaysia's kind of like admittance of refugees from Myanmar, right? Since 2017, where there was a huge exodus of Rohingya people from Myanmar, we have had years and years to prepare to regularize asylum-seeking pathways, but we have not done it. Instead, we have just arrested them, put them in jail, put them in detention centers, and this is the wrong approach. We need to urgently rethink how we confront the refugee situation in Malaysia. Thank you.
Okay, I think before I have the second question, I should come back to you later. I think. And I think that might be good if you speak a little bit slower. It's good for the translation also. That's okay. But I mean, very good information. But before the next question is about what can you think of the Malaysia's government can do for the better protections, but I come back later. Is that okay? I would like to go to Sulaiman, because as you know that the Rohingya people, they are everywhere because of the situations, right? And you're working with the Rohingya community here, and you also have connections with the Rohingya people in other countries. And can you share the situation of them here, and have you found some of them who experienced being in Malaysia before coming to Thailand, and what the situations, can you share the situation?
โอเค ฮัลโหลผมคงจะพูดแบบภาษาไทยเนาะก็น่าจะเป็นที่ว่าจากประสบการณ์ที่ผมได้เจอคนโรฮิงญาที่อยู่ในประเทศไทยนะที่ว่าเคยอยู่มันมีหลายคนคือโรฮิงญาทุกคนมีเป้าหมายที่จะไปมาเลย์อันนี้คือเราเจอหลายพันคนเป็นพันคนเขาก็จะตอบว่าจะไปมาเลย์อะไรเงี้ยก็คืออันนั้นคือความหวังที่เขาคิดว่าจะมีชีวิตที่ดีกว่าตรงนั้นแล้วก็มันก็จะมีบางกลุ่มที่ว่าได้อาศัยอยู่ในประเทศไทยชั่วคราวแบบว่าแบบค่าเดินทางไม่พอเพื่อที่จะเดินทางต่ออะไรเงี้ยเขาก็อยู่ในประเทศไทยสักประมาณเดือน2 เดือนหรือว่าบางคนได้อยู่เป็นปี2 ปีหลังจากนั้นเขาไปที่มาเลย์พอเขาไปที่มาเลย์เขาจะอยู่ไม่ได้ที่อันนี้คือประสบการณ์ส่วนตัวนะครับที่ว่าผมได้เจอก็คือส่วนมากก็จะอยู่ไม่ได้เขาจะกลับมาที่ประเทศไทยแล้วก็หางานทำที่ประเทศไทยแล้วก็ คือถ้าเราดูมุมมองคือของโรฮิงญาเองอ่ะเขามองว่ามาเลเซียเป็นประเทศอิสลามพอเขาคิดว่าประเทศอิสลามมันน่าจะมี culture ที่เขาสามารถเข้าปรับได้หรือว่าสามารถอยู่ด้วยกันได้อะไรเงี้ยพอมองประเทศไทยอ่ะประเทศไทยจะเป็นแค่ทางผ่านหรือว่าจะเป็นเหมือนว่าเมืองพุทธอะไรเงี้ยคือเขาก็จะเหมือนคิดว่ามันไม่โอเคอันนี้คือความคิดที่ว่าเขาเกิดขึ้นมานานแล้วอะไรเงี้ยครับเพราะว่าในมาเลเองอ่ะคือมันมีคอมมูนิตี้ของอิสลามที่เขาเป็นคล้ายๆว่าเป็นโบรกเกอร์มานานอะไรเงี้ยเขาก็จะเรียกแบบมันก็จะมีโฆษณาชวนเชื่อให้เขาแบบมาที่มาเลแต่ปัจจุบันมันอาจจะไม่จำเป็นต้องใช้โฆษณาชวนเชื่อก็คือเขาหนีตายเพื่อที่จะออกมาจากสถานการณ์ที่เขาเป็นอยู่ที่รัฐยะไข่หรือว่าเป็นที่แคมป์บังลาเทศถ้าถามว่าเขารู้ไหมว่าการเดินทางแบบนี้หรือว่าการออกเรือหรือว่าการเดินทางหลายรูปแบบนี้มีโอกาสเสี่ยงที่จะตายหรือว่าอะไรเงี้ยเขารู้ทุกคนรู้เพราะว่าเขาก็ได้ยินมันมีข่าวออกมาอะไรมาเขาก็รู้ว่ามีสิทธิ์ที่จะตายเหมือนกันแต่ที่เขาอยู่มันก็มีสิทธิ์ที่จะตายเหมือนกันคือมันมีโอกาสถ้าเขารอดเขาก็จะสามารถสร้างชีวิตใหม่ได้แต่ถ้าเขาไม่รอดเขาก็ตายถ้าเขาอยู่ที่นี่ต่อเขาก็คิดว่าเขามีสิทธิ์ที่จะตายอันนี้คือเหตุผลหลักๆเลยที่ว่าเขาต้องหนีตายมาจากจุดนั้น
ให้พี่แปลให้พี่แปล
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I that capture what he's saying in English. So the first thing is that yes, he's been talking to the Rohingya people who staying here and learned that most of them want to go to Malaysia because they believe that Malaysia as the share in terms of like the faith base. There are also Muslim brotherhoods. Sisterhood, so then they think that okay, reaching to Malaysia is probably a better destinations. But he found that those who arrived Malaysia, who used to be in Thailand and arrived Malaysia, numbers of them are coming back to Thailand and found that actually Malaysia is not as the kinds of like the safe haven that they've been expected for. So. Then the people who are coming back, and as you know that the people, the Rohingya people, they're coming from Rakhine, from Bangladesh, Putidong, they come because of they're aware the risk journey, they can be die along the way, but they also aware that they can be die at that place also. That's why they agree to take risks because it seems like, yeah, it's probably the same whether to stay or whether to move.
แล้วเราจะเห็นความแตกต่างความเป็นอยู่ก็คือโรฮิงญาที่อยู่ในประเทศไทยหลายๆคนโอเคคือเขามาอยู่ใช่ไหมเขาความเป็นอยู่ถ้าเราพูดถึงความเป็นอยู่ของโรฮิงญาที่ประเทศไทยเขาก็จะไปอยู่ใกล้ๆกับชุมชนอิสลามที่เขาก็พยายามอยู่ที่นั่นแล้วก็พยายามหาลู่ทางพยายามพัฒนาหรือว่าหางานทำหรือว่าพัฒนาตัวเองเพื่อที่จะเอาตัวรอดจากแล้วก็พยายามหาเอกสารต่างๆใช่ไหมพยายามหาเอกสารเพื่อที่จะทำงานได้หรือว่าเดินทางได้แล้วก็จากที่ผมได้ฟังมาจากคนที่อยู่มาเลหรือว่าคนที่อยู่ที่นี่ก็ดีอะไรเงี้ยถ้าเปรียบเทียบอะไรเงี้ยคือความเป็นอยู่ของโรฮิงญาในประเทศไทยรู้สึกว่ามันจะดีกว่าหรือว่ามีโอกาสมากกว่าอะไรเงี้ยมันมีโอกาสมากกว่าที่อยู่มาเลด้วยซ้ำอะไรเงี้ยครับ
Yes, and he also saying that for the Rohingya people who live in Thailand, they usually live nearby the mosque, the Muslim communities. So and then later on they will try to find a job for their livings and also try to find the documents so that they can stay. And from his experience, he found that those who experience in Malaysia compared to Thailand, they've learned that seem that staying in Thailand is kind of like they feel that it's better conditions compared to staying in Malaysia.
แล้วก็ที่ประเทศไทยเองจะมีเขาเรียกอะไรมันมีความใกล้ชิดกับพม่าใช่ไหมค คือเรื่องอาหารการกินอะไรเงี้ยเขาก็สามารถหาซื้อหรือว่าปรับตัวแล้วก็เรื่องภาษาอะไรเงี้ยคือเขาอาจจะอยู่ชายแดนบ้างอะไรบ้างแล้วเขาก็ยังสามารถพูดภาษาพม่าได้อะไรได้แต่ที่มาเลอาจจะไม่ได้ขนาดนั้น
Okay, and because the Thailand is border to Myanmar, that's why like for the Rohingya people, in terms of food, they can like find food that similar to like what they eat in their countries, and also in terms of the language, that some of them they can still speak Burmese at some area, so then they feel like it's okay in this condition.
แล้วก็มีอีกเรื่องหนึ่งคือเรื่องการแต่งงานก็คือในประเทศไทยเองอ่ะโอเคมันก็จะมีคนพม่าเยอะแล้วก็คือโรฮิงญาก็อาจจะสามารถแต่งงานกับคนพม่าหรือว่าอะไรอย่างนี้ได้คือมันมีตัวเลือกให้เขาเหมือนแต่งงานหรือว่าใช้ชีวิตสร้างครอบครัวได้อะไรเงี้ยแต่พออยู่ที่มาเลย์คือมันจะไม่เป็นแบบนั้นคือมันมีไหมที่ว่าเขาอาจจะแต่งงานกับคนที่อยู่มาเลย์อะไรเงี้ยก็มีบ้างแต่คือด้วยคือมันกลายเป็นว่าตอนสุดท้ายเขาต้องหาแต่งงานคือมันกลายเป็นว่าเขาต้องเรียกคนมาจากแคมป์บังลาเทศหรือว่าจากยะไข่อะไรเงี้ยผู้หญิงหลายๆคนคือเราจะเห็นเป็นล็อกผู้หญิงเลยแล้วมันก็จะมีโบรกเกอร์ที่เกิดขึ้นแบบว่าโบรกเกอร์สำหรับแต่งงานโดยเฉพาะอะไรเงี้ยที่ว่าเขาจัดการหาผู้หญิงสำหรับแต่งงานให้อะไรเงี้ยมันก็เห็นเหตุการณ์นี้มันจะเกิดขึ้นในมาเลย์สักส่วนใหญ่ที่ไทยจะน้อยมากหรือว่าจะไม่มีเลยอะไรประมาณนี้ครับ
เมื่อกี้ที่บอกว่าแต่งงานคือเขาจะแต่งกับมุสลิมด้วยกันไหมคะพม่ามุสลิมหรือว่าแต่งกับ
ใช่พม่ามุสลิมก็มีอาจจะมีคนไทยด้วยอาจจะมีอะไรเงี้ยคือมันก็จะมีสามารถเหมือนสร้างครอบครัวได้ง่ายกว่าที่อยู่มาเลยด้วยซ้ำอะไรเงี้ยครับ
Okay, so in terms of like family buildings, in terms of like getting marriage, he found that in Thailand it's more comfortable for the Rohingya people to get married here in Thailand, but they can find their spouse who could be like the Myanmar Muslim, who could be people in Thai community. So those kinds of the family building or marriage is it's okay to happen here, but compared to Malaysia, that it seems to be more limited, and then the marriages have to like the import the brides from from Rakhine, from Bangladesh. That then then there's a networking of the broker getting involved, like the kinds of like the marriage business, like happening. From his observation, he see this kind of phenomenon happen more in Malaysia and not happen much in Thailand.
ที่ผมอาจจะพูดเรื่องแต่งงานเพราะว่าผมเห็นว่ามันก็เป็นปัญหาใหญ่ปัญหาหนึ่งเหมือนกันที่ว่ามันจะมีผู้หญิงตัวเล็กๆผู้หญิงที่แบบบางทีอายุ15 16 17อะไรเงี้ยในการเดินทางบางทีเขาก็รับภาระของการเดินทางไม่ไหวก็มีที่ว่าตายหรือมีการข่มขืนระหว่างทางอะไรเงี้ยเกิดขึ้นจากเหตุการณ์เหล่านี้ผมพบเจอเรื่องนี้บ่อยมากแล้วมันเป็นเรื่องสะเทือนใจที่ว่าเราคิดว่าเราก็ต้องจัดการเรื่องพวกนี้ให้มันเข้าที่เข้าทางนะครับ
Because I have been facing the situations of the young marriage happening, the young ladies for 15, 17 years old that they have to move, and then they found that it's more kinds of like the kinds of like young marriage, like child marriage, and also the journey along the way that they've been dead or they've been raped, that the situation, the issue that he found from the Rohingya community.
แล้วผมก็เจอโรฮิงญาบางคนช่วงหลังเนี่ยนะช่วงก่อนหน้านี้อาจจะไม่ค่อยเจอแต่ช่วงหลังผมก็เจอโรฮิงญาบางคนที่เคยอยู่ที่มาเลเคยอยู่แบบ 5-6 ปีอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็เขาก็มาอยู่ที่ประเทศไทยอะไรเงี้ยผมก็ได้พูดคุยกับเขาว่าแบบเกิดอะไรขึ้นอะไรเงี้ยเขาก็จะแชร์สตอรี่ของเขาประมาณว่าคือแบบที่นั่นอยู่ได้ไหมมันก็อยู่ได้แต่มันต้องอยู่แบบหลบๆซ่อนๆอยู่ตลอดอะไรเงี้ยคือมันต้องพยายามหางานที่แบบที่บางตาอะไรเงี้ยบางทีมันกลายเป็นว่าพออยู่หลบๆซ่อนๆก็คือก็จะโดนเขาเรียกอะไรเจ้าของกิจการอะไรเงี้ยกดค่าแรงอะไรเงี้ยมันมีเรื่องพวกนี้เกิดขึ้นหรือมีการแบบถูกฟ้องแบบเขาเรียกว่าถูกแจ้งเจ้าหน้าที่จับอะไรเงี้ย มีเหตุการณ์เรื่องนี้เกิดขึ้นมันทำให้เขาแบบอยู่ไม่สะดวกขนาดนั้นเขาก็เลยเลือกที่จะย้ายมาที่ประเทศไทยอะไรเงี้ยครับ
And also he encountered two like the Rohingya who used to be in Malaysia for about 5 and 6 years and moved to Thailand and they share their story to him that living there it's kind of not have like good freedom that they have to hide themselves and in order to work also that they have to seek the job that they cannot be like the out in the public something like that and sometimes they've been abused by the employer and also for example in terms of the labor right and also in terms of sometimes the lawyer employer also inform the police about their like living status so that's they say that that's why they like decided to move to Thailand
แล้วตอนนี้ก็คือในประเทศไทยเองอ่ะคือมันสามารถที่จะทำตอนนี้คือเหมือนทำบัตรแรงงานได้อะไรเงี้ยโดยที่ไม่ต้องมารีเช็คกับรัฐบาลพม่าหรือว่าอะไรเงี้ยคือมันเลยทำให้มีโอกาสที่ว่าโรฮิงญาหลายๆคนตอนนี้คือสามารถทำงานแล้วอาศัยอยู่ตามแบบทุกกฎหมายได้อะไรเงี้ยครับ
And also in Thailand that the policy that you can get the card that you don't need to be verified by the country of origins. You can get like kind of worker card. So then that the opportunity for them to stay here in Thailand and try to apply to get that card because you don't need to verify that you are from Myanmar that you like from the from Myanmar government. So you can get that kind of the card also.
แล้วก็ด้วยเหตุการณ์หลายๆอย่างถ้าโรฮิงญาที่ต้องการต้องการไปมาเลที่ว่ารอดหรือว่าที่ว่าเขาใช้ชีวิตได้โอเคหรือว่าไม่มีปัญหาอะไรเงี้ยมันก็ต้องมีเขาเรียกอะไรมีครอบครัวเขาหรือว่ามีญาติพี่น้องเขาคอยซัพพอร์ตแล้วก็คอยชี้นำอะไรแบบนั้นเพื่อที่จะเขาทำได้แต่ประเทศไทยอาจจะต้องการบ้างแต่มันไม่ใช่ขนาดนั้นแต่ถ้าไปมาเลคือผมเห็นน้องบางคนหนึ่งนะที่ว่าผมเตือนไว้แบบผมแค่ให้ไกด์ไลน์ไว้แบบถ้าอยู่ที่นี่ได้ถ้าทำงานที่นี่ได้ก็อยู่ถ้าจะไปมาเลผมไม่แนะนำอะไรเงี้ยแต่แกก็ไปแล้วแกก็จะโทรมาหาผมว่าพี่เนี่ยผมมาเลแล้วผมไม่ฟังพี่แล้วก็ผมอยากกลับมาประเทศไทยทำยังไงดีอะไรเงี้ยมันก็จะมีฟีดแบ็กแบบนั้นเกิดขึ้นนะครับ
Okay, that he noticed that living in Malaysia, if they have the family member who can support them, they should be able to survive. But there's the case that if you don't have that support, it could be struggles. And he used to advise the Rohingya here who wanted to go to Malaysia that you've got to be careful if you go there. And it's found that when the person arrived and later on the person called him back and gave him the feedback that because I did not believe what you're saying now. I'm quite struggle staying in Malaysia, and I wanted to come back to Thailand. Yep.
โอเคก็คือมันกลายเป็นว่ามาเลมันน่าจะเป็นที่ว่าเขาฝังใจก็คือในสังคมของโรฮิงญาก็ฝังใจว่ามันเป็นประเทศที่ปลอดภัยหรือว่าอะไรเงี้ยแล้วเขาคิดว่ายังไงคือสิ่งที่เขาหนีมาเงี้ยเขาก็ไม่รู้ว่าความปลอดภัยจริงๆคืออะไรเขาก็ไม่เคยปลอดภัยมาก่อนอะไรเงี้ยเขาแค่หนีแล้วก็ไปอยู่มาเลก็คือมันกลายเป็นว่าชีวิตเขาไม่ได้รับรื่นตามนั้นแล้วปัญหาทั้งหมดก็คือมันก็มาจากที่ว่าเขาไม่สามารถอาศัยอยู่ในประเทศต้นทางของเขาได้เองถ้าสมมติเมื่อกี้ที่ว่าพี่เขาโชว์กราฟใช่ไหมเราก็จะเห็นว่ากราฟมันมีการขึ้นลงแบบเหวี่ยงก็คือถ้าเราจะเห็นว่าโรฮิงญาอพยพประมาณ 2017 รอบหนึ่งล็อกใหญ่ใช่ไหมหลังจากนั้นคือกราฟมันก็จะลงไปคือมันก็เป็นปกติมันมีการอพยพมาเรื่อยๆแต่หลังจากที่ว่ามีการรัฐประหารเกิดขึ้นมันมีการสู้รบระหว่างทหาร AA กับอารากันอาร์มี่ทหาร AA กับทหารพม่าเหตุการณ์เหล่านี้มันยิ่งถาโถมทำให้โรฮิงญาอยู่ไม่ได้ถ้าเท่าที่ผมเช็คตั้งแต่ประมาณ 2019-2017 ที่ผ่านมาหรือถึงตอนนี้คือเราจะเห็นส่วนมากผู้อพยพเป็นคนหนุ่มคนสาวมากกว่าแ แต่ช่วงประมาณปี2 ปีที่ผ่านมาเราจะเริ่มเห็นคนแก่คนที่แบบไม่ใช่แรงงานไม่ใช่แรงงานที่ทำได้ แต่มันกลายเป็นว่าเราจะเห็นว่ามันเป็นการหนีตายแบบจริงๆจังๆก็คือเขายกทุกคนเท่าที่เขาจะเอามาได้บางคนเป็นเด็กเล็กๆแบบขวบ2 ขวบหรือว่าบางคนอายุประมาณ70-80ก็มีที่ว่าต้องหนีตายมาอะไรเงี้ยอันนั้นคือมันเป็นพอยที่ว่าเราต้องจับตาดูแต่หลังจากเนี้ยคือการที่เขาอพยพมาเนี่ยเราจะทำยังไงต่อตอนนี้คือมันมีเหตุการณ์เหล่านี้มันไม่ได้สงบแต่ถึงตอนนี้มันก็มีการยิงการฆ่าแบบจากทั้ง2 ฝ่ายคือเราก็ถูกกล่าวหาว่าฝั่งหนึ่งเขาจะถูกกล่าวหาว่าเราอยู่ฝั่งนู้นอีกฝั่งหนึ่งเขาจะกล่าวหาว่าเราอยู่ฝั่งนี้เราก็จะถูกฆ่าจากทั้ง2 ฝ่ายแล้วต่างคนต่างโบยความผิดให้กันอันนั้นคือปัญหาใหญ่ที่เราเผชิญอยู่ตอนนี้ครับ
For the Rohingya communities inside Myanmar, that they found that because the reason in Malaysia, because they heard that it's safe, so but they didn't really aware what the concept of safe. So they thought that what they heard from the information, Malaysia is safe, so that's why they choose to be going there. But if you look at the graph, the situation is up and down and depends on the political situation inside Myanmar also. You've seen the graph stood up again after the military coup. And then the Rohingya people, because they are being under the Khao Kwai, under the two bodies fighting between the AA Arakan army and also the Myanmar, the Tatmadaw also. So then they've been attacked by both sides, so then they have no way that they've got to leave. And you see the information from 2017 to 19, those who moved are young people, but for the last couple of years after the coup, those who moved are vulnerable people, the old people, the children, because no one feels safe, that everyone feel that they need to leave the country for their safety. I think I would like to stop here because now he mentioned about the AA, about the situation, the political situations inside Myanmar. So I think I would like to hear from Professor Lalita on maybe you can share.
Okay, I'm not the face of AA, by the way. But I'm not an expert on Rohingya per se. I've been looking at the Thai-Myanmar border mainly, so that's my area of, I don't want to say expertise, but that's what I've been pretty obsessed about in the last, I don't know, God knows how many years. So I can probably share with you, and from my recent trip to Chiang Mai where I met ERO friends coming from NUG, from different groups of resistance groups. I think one of the things that interests me the most at this very moment is the policy coming from the Bangladeshi government. Because it's very clear, I heard someone, a friend of mine, who commented on the changing landscape of the Bangladeshis, the Bangladesh government on Rohingya. After the 8 cut that we all know and we have experienced, money is no more in the areas of Rohingya, in the camps and beyond in Bangladesh. So now the policy that Bangladesh is seeking is to get Rohingyas out of their country. And the situation in all the camps is very, very bad already. I just met a good friend of mine who's a journalist who recently visited Cox's Bazar, and he said compared with all the 9 camps in Thailand, Melak camp and beyond, I also work with refugees here, by the way, so I kind of know the situation and living conditions that refugees in Karen and Myanmar refugees have to be in Thailand. It's not good, but it's definitely not too bad compared with what Rohingyas in Bangladesh have to go through. So the situation in all the camps in Bangladesh is already very, very bad because of the sheer number of Rohingyas themselves. I guess, according to official numbers, they would say 1.1 or almost 1.2 million, but on the ground, the reality is pretty dire here. 1.5 maybe. There are Rohingyas altogether in those camps in Cox's Bazar and beyond, or even this new island that the Bangladeshi government put the Rohingyas in. So I really don't think that the situation is getting any better next year. And I've heard from someone, from a very good source, that by next year, because it would be pretty bad for Bangladesh, money is running out, so the only way that they could do is to try to relocate Rohingyas either back to Myanmar or try to push them away somewhere else. But one of the things I find really disturbing is the fact that Rakhine State itself is a heavily contested area, as we all know. It's not just about the competition, rivalry, and violence by AA and the Tamador or the Myanmar government only, but it's now, among Rohingyas themselves, they have different groups of EROs, ethnic armed organizations like the ASA, like RSO, and beyond. So I think this is the condition that we have to take into consideration. I find it really, really disturbing. Let me come back to Thailand a little bit. I don't really know the context and the situation in Malaysia. I learned from you today, and I really found it pretty amazing, really, that you've got Rohingyas in the detention center. We have lots of detainees in our detention centers here in Thailand as well. But just for your information, according to the terminology given by the Ministry of Interior in Thailand, I believe that there are 4 or 5 official types of refugees. By the way, Thailand is not a part of the Refugee Convention, so they do not accept the term refugee. People on the ground, government officials, they work with refugees, and they work according to what they are assigned, but they just don't use the term refugees. So in order to avoid using this term, the Thai MOI has 4 or 5 words coined to meet this requirement of working with refugees. One is those who fled conflicts from Myanmar, something like that. I don't remember the terms 100% accurately. So basically, these are refugees living in the 9 camps along the Thai-Myanmar border. In Thai, we call them Pawporo. Yeah? And the second one are those coming from fleeing Myanmar after the coup in 2021. Meaning these are urban refugees, these are CDMers, or these are people who fled the misery in Myanmar right after the coup. And then you would be surprised that MOI has also categorized the Uyghurs from China, from Xinjiang, into the 3rd category. The 4th one, I'm not sure if I remember, but... Urban refugees? Urban refugees of all sorts. But Rohingyas are not a part of these categories. That's what I'm trying to say. But if you... North Koreans as well, sorry. There are still some North Koreans here, but I think that the number is not so many. But as you can see, Rohingyas, they're not a part of this categorization by the Thai Ministry of Interior whatsoever. But if you have experienced a situation on the ground, notably in Mesot, you would probably discover for yourself that there are our Rohingya friends everywhere. Yeah, I've seen them around. By looking at them, you know that there are Rohingyas somewhere. But to my surprise, when I first visited Mesot years ago, I discovered that Mesot actually has a very big Muslim community. Yeah, so I think that's part of the reasons why there's so many Rohingyas in Mesot. But again, the Thai government would categorize these people into the illegal migrant workers, no matter what they're doing. But frankly, I'm not so sure about all the technical details about this. But I just wanted to say that there are some weird things about Thailand. There are good and bad things. And sometimes, in my view, I'm a scholar, but I just happen to work for migrant workers and refugees. In border towns from Mae Hong Son, Mae Sot, Mae Sariang, and other towns across the border from Thai and Myanmar borders, there's a lot of bureaucracy and corruption out there. But sometimes, I really hate to say this, but this is how things work and how things operate in this country. Sometimes people who come to Thailand on an illegal basis, when they pay, well, let's say some government officials certain amount of money, let's say 300 baht, 400 baht per month, they get an automatic by default protection. Yeah. So whatever you do, let's say you're here, you don't have any document whatsoever, but you're protected by 300 baht each month. I don't want to get so much into these details, but I've been talking to my Burmese, and I'm talking about Burmese Burma friends, and this is how so many CDMers are surviving here in Thailand. I'm not saying that corruption is bad, but this is how resilience and flexibility work in Thailand. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the near future when we have the new government, but we all say that the new government will have the same face anyway. I don't think that the new government would do so much about this because, yeah, we all know the situation along the Thai-Myanmar border. And that's one of the reasons why, I get you, I get Sulaiman's point 100%, why those who fled into Malaysia, they wanted to come back to Thailand. I've heard situations in the 9 camps, in some of the camps where people they were relocated by the UNHCR scheme to Australia, to New Zealand, to the US. They finally got the document they always wanted all their lives. But eventually they came back to the camps. I mean, coming back to Thailand is already a big thing, from my opinion. Why would refugees who were finally legalized in the US, in the West, in the more civilized countries, why would they want to come back to Thailand, right? But they did not just come back to Thailand. They finally located themselves into the camps they feel like they belong to. I met one young Karen boy from Mela camp, and he is highly educated. He was educated in the Netherlands, in Hong Kong, and elsewhere. He's a really able young man, but he's now living in the camp. Just because he told me, making me cry, he said, I just wanted to find my root, to rediscover my root. And it's just the way humans work, I think. So if we are super rigid, we think about, Rohingyas want to go to Malaysia and Indonesia because these are ideal Muslim countries for them. Sometimes it's not like that, really. I really don't know how to put this, but this is from my life experience. I find it very interesting, but at the same time disturbing. Yes.
I think this is interesting, and it's not only about politics, but it's about the life story and the choice of life of the human being. But I'm not sure if you have any questions from the floor or any questions from the online, because actually I would like to hear anything. I would like to hear a little bit from you that you're talking about. I think we are aware that the root cause is in Myanmar, and you know that they're going to have the election soon. would that be the political change or the elections or anything that would ease the situations and make it more like safe place for the people who like going back, and what do you think?
You know, this morning I was, I gave an interview to one of the, I would say, good media outlets from the Middle East. And they asked me the same question, but in a Thai context really, how would the election impact the political situation, the resistance, or anything else in Myanmar at all? And I said, well, you know, I don't want to be so pessimistic here, but I don't see any possibility of violence subside. You know, I just don't see any chance where all the groups would stop fighting. And from you know, all sorts of dialogues I have exchanged with friends near and far, coming from Myanmar, coming from Mae and Chiang Mai, I can guarantee that the resistance movement in Myanmar, both from the ethnic point of view and from the Burma point of view, they will not stop fighting. Now, but there is one restriction, because I'm not from Myanmar, right? Sometimes in my dream, I feel like I'm from Myanmar, but that's not in my passport, unfortunately. But sometimes I have to ask them, I ask myself sometimes, what is the end state? What is the end? What's the destination of all this fighting? You know, critiques and people who have worked for this issue should say, because we're not warriors, we're not fighters on the ground, right? So we would say that there needs to be some sort of a middle ground here, some sort of idea, you know, that everybody comes together and say, okay, when we're fighting, those who are affected by our fighting is not the military, is barely the military. You know, it's people, ordinary people living on the ground, ordinary villagers, children, young people are fleeing the country on a daily basis. So I don't know. I might be too optimistic here, but I think that every stakeholder, although it's not their fault, somehow they need to come to terms with this idea that fighting needs to stop somehow in order to save lives. Basically, it's not we're not doing this for ourselves, but it's for our own people that we are fighting for. But I really don't know how this is going to happen, really. And let me just say this to you once again, that it's not ERO's fault. It's not ethnic groups' fault. All the problems lie in the mindset of the Myanmar military, basically. So we need to fix this. And I think that the global community, I think that ministries of foreign affairs throughout the world should do something, should do more. You know, we keep talking about Gaza, we talk about Israeli-Palestinian conflict all the time. In Myanmar, it's not that different. You know, people are dying every single day, but the world is not taking Myanmar very seriously. And according to my discussions with so many people before, I think that everybody is exhausted about this. I believe that they want to find the end results. I believe that they want to find the end state of this whole conflict. But frankly, I don't know how, I don't know why. And no matter what ASEAN or the global community are doing, I just don't think it's enough, really.
I think that is good and accurate analysis, looking the situation from the actual perspective, is not from the imagine or in dream. Right? So that's why that means that we still have to find a solution together. Then I would like to go back to Lei Sheng in terms of, as you know, that and also you hear that there is no best solutions, at least for next couple years. That means people are still moving out of the Myanmar, and Malaysia would be still taking people. So what do you think? I mean, what can the Malaysian government do, or how? Because in realization that the situation or the problem exists, is not going to go away soon, and how can the Malaysian government do as a part of ASEAN, and as we believe that we have like ASEAN community. So what do you think, and what do you like to call the Malaysian government to do?
This is a really big question. I think if you really ask me, I can write an entire memo, 100 things that the Malaysian government needs to do. So, for example, did you know that I'm obsessed with immigration detention now because it's so horrible inside. Did you know that to feed immigration detainees, the government uses up to $3 per day for each person that's being detained, and $3, what can that actually buy you? It's not even on par with the cost of living in Malaysia for food alone, right? But really, if you zoom out and take a more macro view, the number one thing we have to do is actually have regular asylum-seeking pathways for people in the country. We haven't had that. We have missed the boat many times. That's why we keep criminalizing people who come to the country, fleeing war, persecution, violence. We treat them as undocumented migrants. We deport them back to the countries that they come from. So the number one thing that we have to do is actually regularize this refugee registration pathways. The government's actually doing that. Recently, it announced that it's doing a scheme called the DPP scheme, which stands for something Malay. It translates into the refugee registration scheme. So it's coming out with a card that it says will replace UNHCR card, and it wishes one day to see the UNHCR exit the country and take over domestic asylum procedures, right? So, but the problem with implementing this is that they are not pairing it with actual legal guarantees for refugees. So it can be a card that says that you're a refugee, but it doesn't come with any right to livelihood, doesn't come with right to healthcare, right to education, right? Because fundamentally we lack a law of recognizing refugees in the country. So that's definitely the number one step to what Malaysia can do in terms of the regional crisis, right? Secondly, to stop all of this abusive immigration rates and detention. I've tried to explain that we are an immigration obsessed nation, and we don't have to be that, right? We can make sure that the immigration enforcement process is humane, it respects rights, it doesn't target. There is a tribunal to recognize people who are refugees who are caught in the process to be released from the immigration detention centers. And finally, and just because the trial of these shipwreck survivors is coming up next week, I have to say the government needs to drop the charges against these shipwreck survivors now. You cannot criminalize survivors of human trafficking, and that's super urgent. That would demonstrate that Malaysia walks its talk as a global kind of Muslim leader, that it tries to portray itself on the global stage, right? So those are the three things that I think is fundamental and non-negotiable.
So that you would like to call to the international community to pay attention on the trial going to happen next week, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, or just the Malaysia government has to drop the charges. We have to keep applying pressure on it.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions from the floor? Couple of questions. Yeah, two persons.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Number one, I noticed the pickup in the arrest of the Rohingyas. That means that there was a policy change during Anwar Ibrahim's government, or what is behind it? That's number one question. Number two, to Kun Sulaiman, maybe I have to speak in Thai, no? why is it ทำไมทำไมทำไมถึงทั้งรัฐบาลบังกลาเทศนะครับกับทั้งรัฐบาลเมียนมาเนี่ยถึงไม่พอใจโรฮิงญาจะพูดให้ตรงไปตรงมาไหมครับว่าอะไรเป็นสาเหตุอันที่สองนี่นะที่คุณสุไลมานสามารถอยู่ประเทศไทยก็ดีแล้วนะครับพอจะอธิบายได้ไหมครับมีวิธีการอะไรเนี่ยที่จะทำให้ทำได้อย่างเหมาะสมครับ Shall we say it in English or not? So I asked Kun Sulaiman, can you be candid to explain to us why both the Myanmar government and both the Bangladeshi government are not so keen about Rohingyas? Number two, if you could share some idea about how Rohingyas can manage to stay in Thailand, maybe possibly or legalistically. Can you share?
Maybe you answer first questions, the Anwar, yeah.
So hello. Sorry. So one of the very quickly, the huge uptake. Part of it can be because of the COVID pandemic, right? So during the pandemic, immigration enforcement has kind of slowed down. But if you take a longer look over the decade, it is still the highest it has ever been. And one of the reasons I think this could be because is that Anwar Ibrahim campaigned on a track of human rights reform for the country, right? That's how he got into power. But then he's sharing in a coalition government now. He's sharing power with much more ethno-nationalist, xenophobic component parties, right? So in order to appease different factions of his really multi-headed coalition that spans across the ideological spectrum, he's doing all of this to appease the more, I would say, like ethno-nationalist, racist political parties in his coalition. So that is one factor. But secondly, also, Anwar has always been weaker, when it comes to numbers from the Malay Muslim majority. It has always been a fact. His base has always been urban people, non-Muslim voters. So in order to shore his credentials, his Islamist credentials with the Malay Muslim majority, he's doing all of this to kind of portray himself as, I'm protecting our nation from outsiders. And this is really important because this is one of his weaker support base. So I think it boils down to political factors, mainly for why the immigration enforcement is going on steroids, basically.
คำถามแรกก็คือทำไมบังคลาเทศถึงพม่าถึงไม่ชอบโรฮิงญาใช่ไหม
ยังไงนะครับ
บังคลาเทศหรือพม่าเนี่ยทำไมไม่ชอบชาวโรฮิงญาคำถามแรก
ถ้าจะให้ผมตอบผมว่าน่าจะเป็นการทำ propaganda มากกว่าอะไรเงี้ยเพราะว่าคือตัวพม่าเองอ่ะเขาทำลักษณะโฆษณาชวนชื่นว่าแบบตั้งแต่แรกที่เขาออกข่าวก็คือเขาโบยให้เราเป็นบังกลาเทศบอกว่าเป็นคนบังกลาเทศอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็หลบหนีเข้ามาอยู่ในแบบประเทศพม่าโดยที่แบบอะไรเงี้ยก็คือไอ้พวกนี้เขาก็จะแบบต่อต้านที่เขาพยายามทำข่าวขึ้นมานะของพม่าเองแล้วก็ของบังกลาเทศเองเขาก็คือเขาก็มองเราเป็นพม่าอยู่แล้วแต่คนบังกลาเทศคนพม่ามองเราเป็นบังกลาเทศแต่คนบังกลาเทศมองเราเป็นพม่าอันนี้คือสิ่งที่มันเกิดขึ้นในบอร์เดอร์ตรงนั้นแล้วก็พอถูกขับไล่ใช่ไหมพอไปอยู่นู่นมันก็จะมีคนบางกลุ่มเขาก็จะพูดขึ้นมาว่าโรฮิงญาเป็นภาระสำหรับบังกลาเทศมันไม่ได้เกิดขึ้นแค่ในบังกลาเทศหรือว่าในประเทศเมียนมาแม้แต่ในประเทศไทยเองก็คือรับข่าวแรกๆที่พม่าปล่อยออกมาเผยแพร่เราก็จะถูกมองเป็นภาระถูกมองเป็นผู้ก่อการร้ายถูกมองเป็นอาชญากรแม้แต่ในเราจะเห็นข่าวก็คือมาเลเซียอินโดนีเซีย เรื่องนี้มันก็มี reflect เกิดขึ้นก็คือเราก็ถูกมองเป็นอย่างนั้นครับ
ขอแปลก่อนนะคะ According to the first questions why Bangladesh or Myanmar don't like the Rohingya people, or the answer is that he think that is because of the propaganda policies by the Myanmar's militaries, and because it's propaganda saying that the Rohingya not belong to Myanmar, they belong to Bangladesh, and when they go to Bangladesh say that no, Rohingya is not Bangladesh, they are Myanmar. So that's why like there is kind of like no place to be like for them to be identified that where they belong to, and there's also the information that making these people as the burdens of anywhere they are going in Malaysia, in Thailand, also that also in Thailand there's the information that for label them as the like members of terrorist people, and they are the murderer or they are the burden, so that sees more of the propaganda. Let me เดี๋ยวให้เขาตอบข้อ2ก่อนนะคะคุณอนุชานะคะอนุชาให้เขาตอบข้อ2ก่อนนะคะแล้วก็ข้อ2
เรื่อง
ที่อยู่เมืองไทย
ใช่ครับถ้าถามผมส่วนตัวพวกผมพ่อแม่ผมมาเข้ามาตั้งนานแล้วเมื่อประมาณเกือบ50 ปีก่อนเขาก็เป็นอยู่ในกลุ่มไร้รัฐแล้วก็ผมก็เกิดที่ประเทศไทยแล้วก็เรียนโตที่นี่แล้วก็ค่อยๆยื่นสัญชาติตามแบบสิทธิของคนไร้รัฐอะไรเงี้ยครับมันเลยได้ตรงนี้มาครับผม
I mean, according to the second questions about how the Rohingya people can have the identity here, talking about his own story that his parents have been living in Thailand moving to Thailand like about 50 years ago, and at that time they are considered as person who have no nationality, คนไร้รัฐ so then he's the children of person who have no nationality, stateless person as the what they call the conditions, but he's the children of the stateless person, so that's why he is able, and he born here and live here, so then he's able to apply for the citizenship. This is for his own situation. จะตอบอะไรเพิ่มไหมหรือว่าเดี๋ยวจะขอไปคำถามทุกคนก่อนค่ะ
My question is regarding the immigration management system in Malaysia. I wonder if, because you mentioned that there is a system in place that going to be replace a refugee UNHCR card in Malaysia, but I wonder if in terms of undocumented labor in Malaysia, are there any a registration in place for those undocumented workers in Malaysia?
A few years ago, there was an amnesty program where if you're undocumented in Malaysia, or if you're made undocumented by whatever circumstances, you could register yourself and be rid of these immigration charges. But that program has now lapsed, and to my knowledge, there's no existing scheme where you can be made undocumented. The only solution for you is to be deported back to your country and find ways to come back in. So that is to my knowledge.
And related to that, you have showed us a graph of how Malaysian authority has been cracked down on immigrations. So my question is it an indiscriminate approach or discriminately targeting specific ethnicities in Malaysia, such as like Rohingyas and so on?
It is indiscriminate. So it is anyone who, it's not refugee targeting. It's not specifically like, oh, there are too many Myanmar people in the country, we're going to crack down on them. It is targeted towards anyone who is undocumented, but the more pernicious consequences of this is that, yet say you're undocumented, you may spend a few weeks in an immigration detention center, which is horrible, really, really bad, and then you go back to your country. But for the refugees, if you're caught in the process, there's no way for you to go back, right? You may face conscription in Myanmar, or in the case of the Rohingya, your country just is not gonna, your embassy officials are not gonna admit you, so you end up spending years in the detention center. So it is indiscriminate, but I would say the effects are different for different classes of people.
And my second last questions, can you give me a rough estimations of Rohingyas in Malaysia?
I think this is on the UNHCR website. The registered numbers, I think, I really don't know, but I
Maybe
think
like
it's 100.
including the unregistered?
I would not know, but more than what is stated there, which is 120,000, I think. So it's definitely more than that. Yeah, and to give a bit of context to this is that there are about 200,000 registered UNHCR registered refugees in Malaysia, but because of whatever reason, bureaucratic inertia, funding cuts, UNHCR registers only 3,000 people a year, 3,000 to 4,000. So really it is a drop in the ocean, and it's a very glacial pace. So a lot of people could be in the country for years and they still remain kind of without the card.
And my last question, picking up on Ajahn Lalita last point actually. So will there be sort of impact if the election will be after the post elections on the Rohingya people? What kind of impact can we anticipate it
In Myanmar.
in Myanmar?
I'm a pessimist here when it comes to the results, the outcome of the general election, because it's definitely not an inclusive election this time, and we all know that the reasons, some reasons for this election is mainly to legitimize the military government. No matter who is coming to replace or not replace Min Aung Hlaing, somebody from the military will stand tall after the election. I don't think that there will be any substantial change after the election, but like I mentioned before, one thing that I'm really concerned is the situation within the Rakhine State, where there's an ongoing fighting from all stakeholders in Rakhine State, and it's getting even more tense, I think. So yeah, from Naypyidaw, the policy, I don't think it's going to change whatsoever. They will deny the rights and everything from Rohingya. If you remember, some time ago, the Tamaror wanted to conscript Rohingyas, and they wanted to use Rohingyas in the war in Rakhine State. And some Rohingyas just went on hoping that eventually they would get citizenship of some sort. But yeah, they didn't get anything, right? So it was just a ploy, it was just a lie given to Rohingyas, and hope that one day they would get something back. But to me, that's not really going to happen under the military junta.
Thank you.
Let me continue with Kun Sulaiman. According to your explanation, see, I'm a policy implementer, so you need to understand the actual situation. อีกแล้ว คือในฐานะที่ต้องนำเสนอข้อประยุกต์นะครับเปลี่ยนนโยบายนี้ก็ต้องเข้าใจข้อที่จริงนะ อาจจะยากสักนิดหนึ่ง ทีนี้ที่คุณสุรวันอธิบายเนี่ยนะครับ มันที่มีปัญหาก็คือ stateless บางประเทศก็ไม่รับเมียนมาก็ไม่รับนะครับและเป็นปัญหาเรื่อง economic burden คือภาระทางด้านเศรษฐกิจ แต่ที่ผมอ่านเนี่ยมันได้ความใจความมากมันมีคนเกลียดชังเป็นความเกลียดชังนะอันนั้นเรื่อง stateless นะกับเรื่อง economic burden ไม่เชิงอธิบายเรื่องความเกลียดชังที่ผมอ่านพอจะอธิบายได้ไหมครับว่าทำไมความเกลียดชังอันนี้ถึงเกิดขึ้น
คือความเกลียดชังไม่ได้มาจากเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจใช่ไหมหรือเรื่องของคือความเกลียดชังไม่ได้มาจากเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจหรือเรื่องของ
มันเป็นเรื่องของ feeling ของคนนะครับแล้วพม่าที่เราอ่านนะที่อ่านเนี่ยมันคล้ายว่าเขาไม่ชอบนะมันมีเหตุผลไหมให้เราเข้าใจได้หรือว่า
อันนี้ผมอธิบายนิดนึงนะ เพราะว่าถ้าคนที่เคยอยู่โรงเรียนพม่าอะไรเงี้ยเขาจะรู้ว่ามันมีการที่พม่าเองมันมีการแบ่งแยกศาสนาไว้คือเขามีความรุนแรงคือเขาเรียกมันเป็นรากฝังลึกอยู่แล้วเรื่องศาสนากับพุทธกับอิสลามมันมีมานานแล้ว แม้แต่ทหารเองเขาจะไม่รับอิสลามเข้าทหารหรือว่าเข้ารับราชการเรื่องพวกนี้ก็คือส่วนมากที่มันมีบางคนที่เข้าไปได้ก็คือเขาต้องไม่เปิดเผยตัวอะไรอย่างนี้เพื่อที่จะเข้าไปเขาก็ใช้จุดนี้ก็คือมันก็จะมีกลุ่มหัวรุนแรงพุทธอะไรเงี้ยเกิดขึ้นตั้งแต่ 2012 ที่เราจะรู้ว่ามันมีการเผานู่นนี่นั่นแล้วก็จะมีการฆ่าเกิดขึ้นใช่แล้วก็เขาก็เอาจุดตัวนั้นด้วยที่ว่าเขามาเป็นประเด็นก็คืออิสลามเป็นประเด็นปัญหาเชื้อชาติอะไรเงี้ยคือมันสามารถมันง่ายมากมันจุดติดได้ง่ายมากเลยมันทำได้ทั่วประเทศมันไม่ใช่แค่เรื่องชาติพันธุ์แล้วมันเขาจะเอาศาสนามาเป็นตัวยืนกลางแล้วมันกลายเป็นว่าพอคนทั่วไปมันมีความเข้าใจน้อยมันกลายเป็นว่ามันไม่หมดเลยมันเอฟเฟกต์ทั้งประเทศมันไม่ใช่แค่เป็นแค่ที่พม่ากลุ่มใดกลุ่มหนึ่งไม่ใช่มันเป็นทั่วหมดเลยนั่นคือสิ่งที่ผมเห็นแล้วก็ได้อ่านแล้วก็ได้เผชิญด้วยเพราะช่วง 2017 เนี่ยผมเคยไปที่ยังกุ้งอะไรเงี้ยมันก็จะมีโทรโข่งที่ต่อสายอะไรเงี้ยเขาก็พูดเรื่องอันนี้ผมไม่ได้มานี่นะแต่ครับผมได้ยินว่าแบบรู้สึกไม่โอเคอะไรเงี้ยเพราะว่าผมอยู่ในประเทศไทยผมก็จะไม่ได้ยินอะไรแบบนี้อะไรเงี้ยเขาก็จะพูดประมาณว่าไอ้แบบนี่นะที่ประเทศเราเนี่ยเขาเรียกอะไรเหมือนกับว่าถ้าคนแบบมันเขาสามารถมากินน้ำมากินแบบอยู่ได้สบายอะไรเงี้ยเพราะเป็นเมืองพุทธเพราะเป็นอะไรประมาณนี้ถ้าเป็นที่อื่นพวกคุณจะไม่ได้อะไรแบบนี้อะไรเงี้ยคือมันก็จะเป็นโทรโข่งแบบมันจะเป็นโทรโข่งตัวนี้มันก็จะอยู่ในชุมชนที่เป็นอิสลามด้วยอะไรเงี้ยซึ่งมันเป็นอะไรที่แบบมันไม่โอเคมากๆเลยอะไรเงี้ยแล้วมันเป็นช่วงที่ 2017 ช่วงที่แบบเพิ่งเกิดวิกฤตโรฮิงญาที่รัฐบุรีรัมย์อะไรเงี้ยครับมันมีหลายอย่างเกิดขึ้นตรงนั้นด้วย
Okay. According to the further questions from Kun Anusha talking about the sentiments of the fearful of the Rohingya people, he want to understand more. Like he want Suleiman to share his analysis more on like why people feel that deep in terms of like they're fearful of the Rohingya people, and Suleiman sharing that is under the Muslim predominant countries like Myanmar is again kind of like using the religions as the propaganda that we are Buddhist, you are Muslim. So and he had the experience going into Myanmar during 2017. The situation in 2012, as you know, that is the occurring of the clash between Rohingya people and other nationalities in Myanmar. And in 2017, he went to Myanmar and he hear from like the public loudspeaker talking about, oh, you can survive, you can have your food and everything because you are under Buddhist. Under the mercy of the Buddhism, otherwise you won't survive, you won't have living here. So he think what he heard is that something that fearing him that these kinds of like separations and using the religion as the source of the propaganda that that was happening inside Myanmar, that probably could be the cause of the fearful feeling of the people towards the Rohingya people. Before I'm going to you, Ajahn, have something to share.
I just want to share, not my experience, but I wrote a chapter in my thesis about racism in Myanmar during the colonial period. And this feeling and emotion, xenophobic emotion, is not something new in Myanmar whatsoever because it happened a long time ago during the colonial period, meaning that when the Myanmar community, when the Burmese community, they wanted to propagate nationalist feeling, so they began to propagate it against the Muslims. Yeah, and at the time in Yangon, for example, it was not targeting towards Rohingyas per se, but it was towards Muslims of all sorts, Muslims from India, Muslims from the Middle East, and so on and so forth. And if you remember a little bit, in 2016 to 2017, when the exodus of Rohingyas happened, I think it actually started in 2011-12 actually. We would hear something like Buddhist abbots or leaders of the monasteries or famous Siaro, they would just come forward and say something really, really bad against Muslims, not just Rohingyas actually, but because at the time the target was against the Rohingya, so they were really targeting by the whole anti-Muslim propaganda, specifically against the Rohingya. What I'm trying to summarize here is this is not new, and the xenophobic feeling in Myanmar is real, and it's always been very, very strong since time immemorial. I think if one day we want to create the new Myanmar, this has to be one of the topics that we seriously discuss. Otherwise, racial violence, communal violence like this would just keep on and on and on. Other countries that experience things like what Myanmar in the colonial period did, like Malaysia, like Singapore. I'm not saying Malaysia is perfect, right? But Singapore, for example, they managed to step up the game and they managed to say, okay, we cannot eliminate this, so let us live together and just move on. But in Myanmar, the xenophobia is real, and for us Thai people, let's say I listen to a monk chanting, a monk preaching about anti-Muslim sentiment, I just cannot believe that a Buddhist monk could be so rude and could say something like that.
Okay, I think that's good. Charlie also, พี่อาลี you have something to say อยากจะยังไงคะ
อยากจะให้ท่านก็ถามข้อทำไมพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญาออกมานี่ผมอยากให้ตรงนี้อยากให้ประเด็นตอบว่าคือพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญาอยู่มาเนี่ยอยู่ที่รัฐบาลมากกว่าอยู่ที่รัฐบาลพม่าแล้วว่าพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญานี่ไม่ใช่ว่าไม่มีปัญหาชันชาติมากกว่าสองอย่างประเด็นหลักๆคือรัฐบาลพม่าในความยุติธรรมไม่มีพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญาเลยเพราะว่าโรฮิงญาสมัยก่อนมีคือชันชาติมีอยู่แล้วมีแท้มีรัฐบาลทำงานอยู่ในรัฐบาลทำงานอยู่ในสสอยู่ในทำงานข้าราชการใหญ่ๆตำแหน่งใหญ่ๆเลยสมัยก่อนหลังๆเนี่ยทหารรัฐบาลพม่าคุมมาเนี่ยหาว่าโรฮิงญานี่ไม่ใช่ประเทศของพวกเขาอย่างเงี้ยคือปัญหานี้ชันชาติคือมากกว่าหลักๆเพราะว่าไม่ใช่โรฮิงญาอย่างเดียวนะกายนี่เขามีกะเหรี่ยงกะชิงไทยใหญ่ว่าเชียงอย่างเงี้ยก็รัฐบาลพม่าหาว่าพวกนี้ไม่ใช่พลเมืองของเขาแล้วก็ปัญหานี่คือหลักๆนี่คือกดขี่เขากุมเห็นเขากุมรังแกเขายึดนู่นยึดเอกสารสมัยก่อนโรฮิงญาในชนิดที่มีโรฮิงญาอยู่แล้วโรฮิงญารัฐบาลพม่าไปทำอะไรยึดทีละอย่างยึดทีละอย่างทีละอย่างทีละอย่างไปล่าสุดว่าหาว่าไม่ใช่พลเมืองของเขาอันนี้คือปัญหาหลักประเทศพม่าที่หลักๆพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญาออกมานี่คือทุกคนที่ออกมาในรัฐบาลพม่าอยู่ที่รัฐบาลพม่าความยุติธรรมโรฮิงญาไม่มีรัฐบาลพม่าทำอะไรเลยไม่มีอะไรเลยทำอะไรให้รัฐบาลพลเมืองที่รับมายูแสนมาสมัยก่อนอังกฤษบุกเก่ามาโปรตุเกสบุกแกมาพี่น้องชาวโรฮิงญาก็อยู่รัฐนี้อยู่แล้วรัฐบาลพม่าทำไปทำมาทำอะไรหาว่าไม่ใช่พลเมืองของเขาอันนี้คือปัญหาหลักๆจริงๆแล้วชาวโลกมันต้องคุยกันตั้งรัฐบาลพม่าว่าชาวโรฮิงญาทำไมออกมากุมชุมน้อยทำไมอยู่ไม่ได้พม่าอันนี้คือปัญหาหลักๆอยู่ที่รัฐบาลพม่ามากกว่าแก้ไขต้องอยู่ที่รัฐบาลพม่า
Okay, yes. Kun Ali also talking about actually those who caused the issue, the problem is the Myanmar government that what they call the ถอนสัญชาติ take out the nationalities because Rohingya used to get recognized as the citizens of Myanmar, and I think people who study on Rohingya and situation in Myanmar, you all know and aware that Rohingya used to be part of the citizens, and then they lift up, the government at some point lift up the citizenship, so then they become non-citizen. So, and not only for the Rohingya, but some others ethnic minorities also facing the same issue. I wonder is there any questions from online มีไหมคะ online แล้วก็ anyone have any questions ค่ะ or maybe one each, so then I come back to the summary.
Actually, I want to ask for some solutions from all of you. Is it possible that ASEAN can do something about it? Because ASEAN consists of many countries, and together we can form some kind of convention and agreement, which might be something like a blanket acceptance for members in ASEAN. It might take some kind of imagination, but I think maybe that might be one kind of vehicle to kind of set some kind of convention for we call how to treat Rohingyas, for example, or others.
Maybe questions first. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, I think get question first and then we answer.
Sure, mine will be more Malaysia specific. So here in Thailand, we have seen international pressure lead to changes. We have the national screening mechanism, albeit superficial, and we have downward pressure applied from the National Human Rights Commission onto immigration about the treatment of Rohingya in detention. So we do see the role of international pressure, both regional and the wider community, global community, leading to, I don't want to call it progress, but steps here in Thailand. We heard from you about in Malaysia, there's a very delicate balance of power happening right now. What's the role of international influence or pressure on the Malaysian government, and how susceptible to that do you think they are, given that the home situation is so difficult?
You can answer this and you can answer this first of all.
I will. Sorry, what's your name?
I'm Matthew.
Matthew. I think I would just take Matthew's question. Sure. I'm not really an ASEAN expert, but the role of international human rights groups. Interesting question. I think Malaysia has very strong domestically focused human rights networks, and they have been campaigning on this issue for years and years, and that's partly why there is a kind of upcoming refugee registration scheme that's happening. Although we don't really know much, the details are pretty hazy on that. It might end up being like the NSM in Thailand, who knows. But there is effect on sustained campaigning. So for example, the government proclaims that it has improved some immigration detention center conditions, but it's not. They need to abolish detention, not make detention conditions better. So that's always a struggle that when it comes to campaigning on issues like that. And I want to say that I'm not very optimistic about change, just because the election is coming up in 2 years, 2.5 years, I think. And so the government will be going to the ballot box, and they will have to then show their constituency that we have done all of this to kind of make Malaysia more Malaysia, right? And so really the timeline for change should have happened 2 years ago. So Anwar, before he came to power, he has consistently said he will ratify the UNHCR convention. But once he's come to power, there's absolute silence on that front. So the time for change was 2 years ago when the election was still many, many years away, right? But with this timeline shrinking, I'm truly kind of not very optimistic that although as Spotify writes, I will always kind of pressure the government, but really the timeline is shrinking.
I don't really have any solution for ASEAN, but one big problem that I have found is the fact that every year ASEAN chairmanship changes. So let's say this year it's Malaysia, and I know how hard Malaysia has been trying to do for Myanmar. But when work has already been done by Malaysia, then next year it will be Philippines. the mandate of the Philippines will definitely be different from Malaysia. And people who work with Myanmar, or people who work on Myanmar, expertise from the Philippines, they will definitely lag expertise on Myanmar. And I really don't think that the Philippines will put so much efforts into Myanmar, because at the end of the day, it's the problem in the South China Sea, 9-dash line, things like that. So their efforts will definitely be more towards curbing the Chinese influence in the region. But I'm not saying that the Philippines will downplay the role of how important human rights in Myanmar is. We've all heard of the 5-point consensus by ASEAN, and there have been rumors, voices that 5-point consensus should be reformed, should be changed at some point, but at the end of the day, we haven't seen anything. And I guess that most ASEAN countries just take 5-point consensus by default already, because they don't want to do anything about it. I would highly suggest and recommend that ASEAN should have a special envoyship from Myanmar, because when we talk about Myanmar, it's not just about restoring democracy into the country. Once democracy has been restored, then there will be other problems. If you understand, if you remember, the intensification of the Rohingya actually happened during the democratically elected government under NLD. So what I'm trying to say is that there's so many problems in Myanmar intertwined. So we don't just need a 5-point consensus, but we need a real special envoyship for Myanmar from the ASEAN Secretariat to work on this on a permanent and sustainable basis.
Okay, I think that's interesting. I'm aware of the time. I wonder if there is no questions here. I would like to hear from the 3 speakers. Do you have anything more to share? Your point is very interesting on to have special envoys specific on Myanmar, and this is something that I think we can think further. And also, I still have questions on what's the role of Aisha, right? We have one each from each country, right, to be member of Aisha. So I'm not sure whether we can do anything on that. But if there are any other outstanding questions, if not, I would like to go back to the floor. Sulaiman ไม่แน่ใจอยากที่จะคุยว่ามีอะไรที่อยากจะแชร์อีกนะคะหรือว่าอยากให้รัฐบาลทำอะไรหรือเปล่าอะไรเงี้ยกับสถานการณ์ของโรฮิงญาในประเทศหรือว่าในมาเลเซียก็ตามในภูมิภาคนะคะ
ได้ครับเมื่อกี้พี่เขาพูดเรื่องแม่สอดใช่ไหมครับผมเป็นคนแม่สอดอยู่แล้วอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็คืออยากไฮไลท์นิดนึงว่าบางคนหลายๆคนเขาแยกโรฮิงญาไม่ค่อยออกอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็จะระบุหลายๆคนที่ไม่ใช่โรฮิงญาว่าโรฮิงญาก็ได้อะไรเงี้ยทั้งที่แม่สอดเองคือมีโรฮิงญาประมาณ 10-15% แค่นั้นที่เหลือนี้คือจะเป็นพม่ามุสลิมคือมันก็จะเป็นหน้าตาคล้ายกันอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็ผมเจอข่าวหลายรอบมากทั้งช่อง3ทั้งคนสนธิก็ออกมาพูดที่ว่าโรฮิงญาอะไรเงี้ยซึ่งแบบทั้งช่อง3มันมีการตีกันอะไรเกิดขึ้นอะไรเงี้ยมันก็ไม่ใช่โรฮิงญาในคลิปที่ตีกันสักคนเลยอะไรเงี้ยเขาก็มาพูดว่าโรฮิงญาอะไรเงี้ยมันเป็นสิ่งที่เหมือนมันไม่ควรเกิดขึ้นอะไรเงี้ยคืออะไรๆก็ระบุว่าเป็นโรฮิงญาเป็นความผิดของโรฮิงญาอะไรเงี้ยผมเจอหลายข่าวมากเป็นอย่างนั้นครับ
would like to share because some of you mentioned about situation in Mae Sot because I myself living in Mae Sot and I learned that actually in Mae Sot the populations of Rohingya is about 10 to 15%. And the rest are Myanmar Muslim, but we look alike, and people always confused, and people think everything that happened is because of the Rohingya people. Also, there's the information from the news, mainstream news media outlet, and also famous social influencers also talking about when the quarrels happening, like the fightings, they think that it's Rohingya people caused that instabilities, cause the problem, let's say, but actually they are not Rohingya. So for myself, I'm concerned of these kinds of informations that spread into the society, like blaming everything to Rohingya.
แล้วก็อีกอย่างหนึ่งก็คือแบบที่คือเราจะทำยังไงให้โรฮิงญาสามารถเขาเรียกว่าโอเคในเขาเรียกว่าภูมิภาคอาเซียนอะไรเงี้ยสามารถอยู่ได้แล้วก็ถ้าเป็นเรื่องนั้นผมคิดว่ามันจะเป็นการให้ความรู้ความเข้าใจเรื่องโรฮิงญามากกว่าอะไรเงี้ยเพราะว่าคือหลายๆคนคือไม่เข้าใจว่าโรฮิงญาเป็นอะไรยังไงอะไรเงี้ยมันก็จะมีแค่เขาโคมลอยที่ว่าเขาทำอย่างงู้นทำอย่างนี้อะไรเงี้ยที่ว่าเสียหายคือมันเหมือนข่าวที่เสียหายมันออกมาก่อนอันแรกเพราะว่าข่าวที่ดีมันออกมาที่หลังปุ๊บเขาก็จะโฟกัสที่แบบbad deal ก็คือแบบข่าวที่แย่ๆอะไรเงี้ยมันกลายเป็นว่าโรฮิงญามองเป็นตัวร้ายอะไรเงี้ยถ้าเป็นไปได้ก็คือเขาเรียกอะไรบรรจุเรื่องเหตุการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นอะไรเงี้ยเหตุการณ์ที่เกิดขึ้นในพม่า 2012 2017 อะไรเงี้ยบรรจุเข้าไปในมหาลัยหรือว่าอะไรเงี้ยคือให้คนรุ่นใหม่เข้าใจว่าเหตุการณ์เหล่านั้นมันเกิดอะไรขึ้นโรฮิงญาเป็นอะไรยังไงอะไรเงี้ยคือมันก็ต้องจัดทำหลักสูตรสิ่งเหล่านี้ขึ้นมาอะไรเงี้ย
Talking about the Rohingya, the perceptions or understanding of the Rohingya people in the ASEAN level, he thinks that the main issue is that people don't understand or don't know who are Rohingya people. So that they have some kinds of perception, but it's not good body of knowledge to really understand. So he thinks that the education would help. It would be good to public educate on what had happened in like 2017, the exodus of the Rohingya people. Like he thinks that this would help to make better understanding of the situation of who are Rohingya people.
แล้วก็สิ่งที่ผ่านมาก็รัฐบาลไทยก็คือก็ขอบคุณรัฐบาลไทยหลายๆอย่างที่ว่าคอยช่วยเหลือเท่าที่เขาทำได้นะก็คือเราก็เข้าใจว่ามันมีเรื่องเซนซิทีฟเรื่องความสัมพันธ์ระหว่างประเทศอยู่ด้วยอะไรเงี้ยแล้วก็ยังก็คือยังโรฮิงญาหลายๆคนก็ยังได้โอกาสคือทำงานหรือว่าอาศัยอยู่ที่นี่ได้บ้างอะไรเงี้ยครับ
Also would like to thank the Thailand country, Thai authority whatsoever that even if there are sensitive issues about the Rohingya people, but they still have the opportunity to live their life and even the sensitivity between like Thai and Myanmar in terms of like the national relations, I mean the foreign affair. But there still be space for the Rohingya to live here and to like work. Yes, so then would like to thank.
แล้วอีกอย่างที่อยากให้ช่วยถ้าอยากให้ช่วยก็คือผมคิดว่าน่าจะเป็นเรื่องของเด็กเด็กรุ่นหลังที่ว่าเกิดมาในนี่หรือว่าเด็กวัยรุ่นหรือว่าเด็กอายุอย่างน้อยๆอะไรเงี้ยให้เข้าถึงการศึกษาอะไรเงี้ยเพราะว่าผมมองว่ามันจะเป็นปัญหาในอนาคตก็คือเราก็รู้ว่าโลกสมัยเนี้ยคือมันก็หมุนด้วยการศึกษาหมุนไปด้วยการศึกษาถ้าเด็กหลายๆคนที่เกิดมาหรือว่าอยู่อะไรเงี้ยที่แม้แต่ในประเทศไทยทั้งมาเลย์ทั้งอินโดอะไรเงี้ยถ้าเขาไม่ได้ถึงการศึกษาอะไรเงี้ยผมคิดว่าเด็กเหล่านี้จะเป็นปัญหาใหญ่ในอนาคตของอาเซียนก็ได้คือเราอาจจะเป็นไวรัสที่ว่าทำลายสังคมเหล่านี้จริงๆก็ได้ครับ
So that what I would like to call request is to provide education for the children because the children anywhere because no matter where they are because if they don't get proper education so they can be what he says the virus to the whole society the whole community so what the request and call is to just provide education for the children
แล้วสิ่งสุดท้ายก็คือคนที่มันก็จะมีโรฮิงญาหลายร้อยคนหลักพันคนที่ยังอยู่ใน IDC ผมคิดว่า เราหาทางหรือว่าหาลู่ทางให้เขาออกมาข้างนอกและสามารถใช้ชีวิตข้างนอกหรือว่าทำงานได้อะไรเงี้ยผมคิดว่าประเทศไทยน่าจะให้โอกาสแบบนั้นแล้วก็เด็กๆหลายๆคนที่เกิดที่นี่และโตที่นี่อะไรเงี้ยผมคิดว่าเขาก็น่าจะได้โอกาสเหมือนที่ผมได้มาอะไรเงี้ยผมคิดว่าพวกเขาก็ไม่ได้เป็นผมว่าพวกเขาจะมีประโยชน์ต่อประเทศแน่นอนพวกเขาจะไม่เป็นภาระต่อประเทศแน่นอนครับ
Then lastly, I would like to call also on to release the Rohingya who are being detained in the immigration detentions, like 100 or 1,000, whatever. But again, and I believe that if we provide opportunity for the people, particularly the children, to get growing up into the society, they would not be burdened to the society. And I learned from myself that I've got those opportunities. So I think that it's good way for them to be able to contribute and not making the society as to be the burden, that what I call. I think it's similar to Malaysia, right, in terms of like to release people from the immigration detentions. So I would like to pass to like the final words for you and for Ajahn.
I guess my appeal is less policy-based because there's a lot of being discussed today already. But Malaysia has always been trying to portray itself as a global, Muslim liberal democracy leader. It's done so by mediating between Thailand and Cambodia. It did so by inviting Trump to the recent ASEAN summit. But it can also do so by just showing leadership in recognizing refugee rights at home. It can start being a humane Muslim liberal democracy. Can start with very such small steps.
Oh, that's pretty short. I have both good news and bad news for you as my summary for the whole session here. Good news is from Thailand. We're supposed to talk about Malaysia, but because I'm not an expert here, so let me just say on Thailand, I think that the policymakers here in Thailand are now changing. People my age, in their 40s, in their late 30s, working at the National Security Council of Thailand, the army, they have perceived, they tend to have views that if we do not change anything and if we still do everything like before, then Thailand will face dilemmas after dilemmas in the future. So I guess for us, the most difficult thing ever is to get started, and then after something has changed, something has already started, it will get easier along the way. Bad news from me is I feel like the xenophobic nationalism, patriotism, xenophobic feeling in Thailand is on the rise. And this is something that we should pay close attention to, because in Masot alone, we know how diverse, we know how dynamic Masot is. But there have been cases in the last couple of years where migrant learning centers, aka migrant schools, have been forced to shut down by the Thai police. We have heard instances where migrant workers, actually in Thailand we still have a law from the 1950s and 60s where certain jobs are only reserved for the Thais, like barbers, like shopkeepers, and there are some other jobs I don't even remember. But it's been decades, and this law and restriction haven't been lifted yet. I believe that if we want to move forward with human rights and humankind, we need to make changes on this. So, there have been instances in Masot where Myanmar migrant workers were arrested because they just sell stuff in the market. We have heard Rohingya people, well, I don't know if there are Rohingya actually, maybe there are Myanmar Muslims selling rotis on the streets, selling things on the streets. I guess flexibility has always been a good point, a strength of Thailand, and we need to keep that intact to our policy making process.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have reached out the good timing. If there's no outstanding, striking questions, I think we can conclude the talk. And this is the beginning. And I'm glad to hear that now we talk about Rohingya not only in Thailand, Malaysia, and we are thinking of what can we do. Seems that success is still far away, but I think we got very good idea here and see and understand people from the field, from the ground, and live experience. Thank you so much, Suleiman, to share your information, your story. Thank you so much, Ajahn Lalita, to share a lot of very good knowledge and analysis and very helpful, and also Lei Cheng on your work and dedications to advocate for the situation of refugee in Malaysia. And thank you the audience, everyone to be here and very participative, and people online also listening, the translators and everyone here. Thank you so much. Here is the feedback to share. If you can do the feedback, that would be very helpful for us to be improved for the better event in the future. And thank you everyone. Have a good Friday evening. Enjoy. Goodbye.